Hello. Okay, I am back. I have tried to do this so many times and I was like crying in one and then my mic wasn't plugged in and then, okay, I'm going to try again. Okay. And I apologize if I look emotional. And also I went into work today and my boss was like, "Are you okay? Because you look like a corpse." And I'm like, "Thank you." Okay, so I just wanted, I've been gone and, part of it is, because my work has been wild, but it's like getting better. I'm getting used to it. But I think, I don't know if I did say before that I thought maybe my man was going to dump me. Well, he didn't dump me officially. He just, sorry, it's really hard to say out loud. I don't know why. That's like, and every time I've tried to record, this is where I hitch up. I'm like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Anyway, he, blocked me and just disappeared. So, um, ugh, that has been wild to deal with. I'm okay. It just, you know, what? But anyway, so I just wanted to let you know, why I've been gone and just give you the update. I probably overshare with you, but that's, that's it, you know? And, at least it was just a year of my life. It's not like I was like married to the man for 30 years. So anyway, so I've just been, sorry, I don't have a tissue. I'm just going to use a scrunchie. Chaotic as always. Okay, so that being said, that is that. And I know we have like a million books on the go and we always do that. I always start books and then I stop them. Anyway, but we're going to read all the books that we started. It's just, I have this book from the library that I got and it looks like interesting and I thought maybe we could start it. And it's an easy read. So I thought maybe we could fly through it fairly quickly. It is Jackie's Girl, My Life with a Kennedy Family by, I think it's Kathy McKeon. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not really sure. So she was, she grew up in Ireland and came to America in 1964 when she was 19. She was then hired as Jackie's assistant and occasional nanny to her children from 1964 to 1976. She is now a mother of 3 and a grandmother and lives in Florida. So, yeah, I just thought that we'd start reading it. Okay. Sorry for the tearful introduction. All right, we got that out of the way. Who cares? He's just a man. Okay. Now, let's read the introductions because they're interesting. All right. To Jackie. Your extraordinary courage and strength were an inspiration for me and strongly influenced the proud mother and grandmother that I am today. Thank you for allowing me into your family. To John and Caroline. I believe that individuals come in and out of our lives for a reason. How apropos. And that we need to slow down long enough to reflect on how they may have influenced who we are today. It's hard to put into words exactly how your mother influenced me, but I have tried to capture it here in my memories of her and of the both of you. Thank you for allowing me to share these memories with others. And then there's a quote by Jackie Onassis. If you produce one book, you will have done something wonderful in your life. Well, I guess I've done nothing wonderful. All right, we're going to read the prologue. Where were you when it happened? In 1964, the shock of President Kennedy's assassination was still fresh, and the question felt more urgent than casual, popping up the way it did at bus stops and lunch counters, on church steps and park benches, within moments of meeting someone for the first time. It was as if everyone thought that collectively reliving the last moment of innocence might somehow help us recapture what was lost forever. That question would linger for 5 years, then 10, then 50. But in 1964, people were already beginning to reframe their lives around it. At 19, I was still too naive, though too foreign, to grasp its significance. My worldview back then was no bigger than the servants' quarters of the wealthy Manhattan households where I worked, making beds, polishing crystal, and caring for the well-groomed children of posh society women. I was really no more than a child myself when Jacqueline Kennedy came into my life and made me a part of hers. I was in Caroline's room one afternoon, soon after I was hired, when the question was directed at me. I froze for a panicked moment. No one had told me what to say, if there were rules I was to follow, or an answer I was meant to give. If the slain president's 7-year-old daughter all of a sudden wanted to know, where were you when it happened, Kath? Caroline, more than anyone, deserved an answer. Of that much I was certain. I would have to trust that, even at such a tender age, she had already learned in the months since her father's murder what reminders of him might ease her heartache. After all, it was she who had broached the delicate subject. She had been showing me some of her favorite storybooks and toys when she paused and looked up at me. Did you know that my father was President of the United States and that he got shot? Yes, I did know, I said carefully, and I'm so sorry that happened, Caroline. The words felt too thin to hold the weight of the moment, but Caroline seemed happy, not sad, to be talking about him. Were you here or back in Ireland? I told her I had been back home, in a wee village called Enniskeen, where I lived on a small farm with my parents and 7 brothers and sisters. Caroline pressed me to go on. The people in Ireland must be very sad, because my daddy was Irish, and very popular, and people loved him, she said. I was surprised that she seemed to know about her father's deep bond with my homeland, and I could tell she was hungry to hear more about it firsthand. You're right, I said. We were all very sad. Every family had a picture of your father hanging up in their house, right next to the Pope's. My mother kept ours right there in the kitchen. Where were you when it happened, Kath? Keeping my voice steady and calm, I told her my story. There was a dance in the village every Friday, I began. My older sister... this is an Irish name. Brage. We have to look this up, because I'm going to butcher it. Okay, sorry for the sniffles. Brige? Okay. How to pronounce. All right, I don't know if this is true, but we'll find out. I'll turn it up. It's loading.
Breach.
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 Breach. Okay, lovely. My older sister Breach and I would always go with our friends. We would spend hours getting ready, putting together our outfits and curling our hair using strips of clean rag. First, we'd tie a length of the cloth into a loose circle, then take a section of damp hair and wrap it around the circle before tying the 2 ends of the rag together tight. My grandmother used to do that in my hair. By the time our hair dried and we untied our rag curlers, we'd have ringlets to style up into a bouncy sock hop ponytail or into a teased flip like Sandra Dee. I told Caroline how we had primped as usual in front of the broken kitchen mirror that night and started walking to the village. We stopped at a little shop on our way to buy sodas, or maybe it was breath mints. The shopkeeper, Mrs. Finnegan, looked at us and clucked her tongue. I hate to tell you girls, but there's no dance tonight, she said. The President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was shot today. Everything is canceled. Just 5 months earlier, President Kennedy had visited his ancestral home in Duncanstown, County Wexford, arriving in Ireland mere hours after delivering his historic Ich bin ein Berliner speech in divided Germany. He had vowed to return to us soon, promising next time to bring his wife Jackie and their 2 children. We had no television at home, no electricity even, but 2 days after the shooting in Dallas, Texas, my whole family spent hours huddled around Dad's cheap battery-operated radio to listen as President Kennedy's funeral mass, then the long procession to Arlington National Cemetery, and his graveside service were all broadcast across the Atlantic. I remembered catching the faint echo of hoofbeats 3,000 miles away as the horse-drawn I don't know that word either. Caisson? Caisson? I don't know. Carried the fallen president to his final resting place. And then came the muted roar of 50 million. No, not 50 million jets. 50 military jets flying overhead in tribute. It wasn't that sound, but the stillness that followed that made me feel connected for the first time in my life to the vast world beyond our small, rural corner of Ireland. Nothing this big had ever happened in my memory. I sensed that this sadness I felt was but a stitch in a tapestry more vast and intricate than any of us could possibly imagine. Now I was telling President Kennedy's little girl how my father had come into our room that night, as he usually did for bedtime prayers, kneeling as he always did on the hard concrete floor, and how he offered up our daily rosary to the soul of President Kennedy and to his grieving family. Peace be with them, he murmured as we finished our final round of 3 Hail Marys, 1 Our Father, and a Glory Be. Peace be with them, I echoed. I went to bed wondering what their lives would be like now. I fell silent and saw tears falling down Caroline's cheeks. She was very quiet for a few moments, then spoke up in a clear voice meant to reassure me that she was all right. I was just saying a little prayer for him, she said, wiping her eyes. That's good, Caroline, I said. I'll say one for him, too. I couldn't know then, mere days into my new job, how thoroughly I would be swept up into this most royal of American families. How their everyday life would also become mine, my heart lifted by the powerful love they shared, and shattered by the unimaginable tragedies they endured. That I would someday tuck a piece of Caroline's wedding cake in my freezer, or teach her brother how to ride a bike. I had no inkling that their beloved mother would play such an important part in shaping the woman I was yet to become. That not only my life, but my very character would be transformed, not by where I was when it happened, but after. 5 years passed, then 10, then 50, and now I'm finally ready to tell my other Kennedy story. Ooh, this could be good. By the way, I did my nails yesterday. My nails are did. You know, after you go through something sad, you should do nice things for yourself. So, I got my nails done. Fresh. What else have I done? I donated my plasma because, like I said, there's plasma donation centers all over Canada, and they pay you for your plasma donation. It's like an incentive because, you know, like to keep people donating. So your first 3 visits, you get 100 doll hairs each time you go. I know. So I already went and I got 100 doll hairs, and then I went today and I got 100 doll hairs. And then I'm going on Monday and I'll get another 100 doll hairs, and that will pay all my bills. Not all my bills, but it'll pay the rest of the bills I have for the next few weeks. So I was really excited. And then I'm going to keep going. And then now I have to decide what I'm going to do with that money. So I was going to set it aside to take my daughter on vacation, because I thought her and we could have like a little girls trip, like the eldest, you know, because she's getting older now. And I thought that would be cute. And I was like, what if you and I, you know, did like a girly trip? And then I suggested a Disney cruise, and she was like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I thought like I would go and I would donate my plasma, and then I would just like take the cash and I would just save it for a year and then do something great with it. Because I wanted to do something like before the eldest goes into high school. And so I thought like that would be something special that her and I could go do. But now I'm wondering if I should just like take the extra money and then just like give it to my grandfather just sneak it into his wallet. I don't know. Maybe I could do both. Because you go twice a week. So maybe I could take the first bit of money and save it for something. Or, I could take the kids to the movies or something. Maybe that could be like our weekly fun money. And then the second time that I donate, I could sneak it into my granddad's wallet. So hard to know what to do. Okay. There's a cute guy at work, but I don't want to be on the rebound. I'm not. I love my ex-boyfriend, but he doesn't love me. So, oh well. It happens, right? Okay, that's all. All right, let's do chapter. I'm sorry that you're getting sad little updates in the middle, and I'm just like, okay. Chapter 1, Meeting Madam. Also, I hate to tell you that the rabbit ate through my main light. He ate through the cord. Little bugger. Timmy. I don't even know where he is right now. He's always causing a ruckus somewhere. You can probably hear there's a classic movie playing in my bedroom. The door is wide open. Oh. He's probably in my bedroom. Okay. We'll read chapter 1 and then I'll go deal with him because the first thing he wants to get on my bed and he wants to pee. Like, he's so bad. All right. Let him have his fine. I have to wash everything anyway. Okay. Timmy, come here, baby. I know. He's like, oh, Mom's door is open. I'm going right in there. Okay. Meeting Madam. On a chilly fall Thursday morning in 1964, I stood beneath the green awning at the entrance to an elegant pre-war apartment house at the corner of 5th Avenue and 85th Street. Central Park was right across the street, trees ablaze in full autumn glory, and I could see the grand steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art just down the block. After almost a year in New York, I was starting to become familiar with the city's landmarks. But the sense of awe that I was actually living here now was as fresh as it had been the day I stepped off the plane and had carried me from Ireland to John F. Kennedy International Airport. No one back home would ever believe that an uneducated immigrant farm girl was now moments away from meeting one of the most sophisticated and admired women in the world. I felt like a peasant about to have a private audience with the Queen. What would Jacqueline Kennedy make of me? Pure Irish luck had landed me this interview, and all I could do now was pray that it would carry me through. Okay, hold on. I'm going to pause because I have to go see what that rabbit's up to. Okay, he's fine. He wasn't in there because I didn't find any pooh berries. All right. Where are we? I swiped my clammy palms across my cheap tatty coat and caught sight of the clunky black shoes I instantly wished I hadn't worn. Not that I had so many others to choose from in my sparse wardrobe. I patted my head to make sure no stray hairs had escaped from the bobby-pinned bun that I thought might make me look more grown-up and professional than my age and resume disclosed. I felt dowdy as a park pigeon as all the smart young secretaries and career girls hurried by on the sidewalk in their pencil skirts and heels. Christ almighty, I scolded myself. Were you thinking the Kennedys would be hiring a milkmaid now? I faked a brave smile for the Secret Service agent who greeted me and ushered me to the elevator. He was the one I really had to thank for this golden opportunity. My cousin, Jack Maloney, was a New York City policeman who had been assigned to do crowd control outside Mrs. Kennedy's building, and he'd become pals with this particular agent, a Boston-born and bred Irishman in his 60s by the name of John James O'Leary, who preferred to be called Muggsy. Muggsy tipped off Jack that Mrs. Kennedy was looking for a nice Irish girl to fill a position as a live-in domestic on her staff. Here you are, Muggsy said, now as the doors parted at the 15th floor and I stepped out. Good luck. He pushed the down button and disappeared before my legs could heed the urgent message my brain was sending to turn and run. What are you thinking? You don't belong here. I found myself inside a small foyer. The door leading to the apartment's grander main entryway opened, and an older woman in a black uniform greeted me in a soft Irish brogue. The familiar lilt did nothing to calm my nerves, though. On the contrary, I instantly took note that her accent was nowhere near as thick as my own. Nearly a year in New York had done nothing to change it. It was like a porridge that refused to thin, no matter how much milk you poured into it. I was constantly being asked to repeat myself in America. What if Mrs. Kennedy couldn't understand a word I said? The housekeeper led me down a hallway, past a large mirror hanging on the wall in a beautiful tortoiseshell frame. I stole an anxious glance at my reflection. I looked every bit as awkward as I felt. My dark brown hair fell nearly to my waist when it was down, but it was too straight and fine to make a good bun. I had a knack for hair styling, but today's effort, to my disappointment, tilted more toward Biddy than ballerina. I could say the same about my figure. I had been athletic and nicely toned when I'd left Ireland, to be sure. But the loneliness and sheer misery of my first job in America, the one I was now trying to escape, had sent me on a junk food binge that pushed my weight up to nearly 180 pounds on my 5', 7" frame. Well, girl, I got that on my 5'4" frame. So when I went to donate plasma today, he was like, all right, get on the scale. And I'm like, oh, must I? So I get on the scale and it's in kgs, which, I never make the conversion in my head. So I'm like, oh, that many kgs. That seems like a lot of kgs. And he's like, if you push that button, it'll show you in pounds. Girl, it was literally 10 pounds heavier than my bathroom scale. And I was like, I beg your most pardon. Like, I don't know what you mean. It was awful. So I said, I guess I'll go on the treadmill tonight. On that note, here's my tip for treadmill walking. So, I get very bored very easily, as you can probably tell, because I always have to stop and like have a little chitty chat with you. So, if you are on the treadmill and you're like bored as hell, what you got to do is, I can't watch a show. Like I'm like plodding along, like, oh my God, when does it end? You need to point your treadmill at the TV, or you need to get your phone out, like something where you can watch a video, okay? You need to find like a 1980s mix of music videos, okay? And let me tell you, you will be beep, bop, blooping down the treadmill. And so you got to get like, okay, so my breakup song is I Could Never Be Your Woman, me. I could never, I think it's by Whitetown. Anyway, so let me tell you, you get that going. And then you start cat walking. These are your feet and your legs. You're not just like going like this, plodding. Think, And I'm telling you, that will work out your booty and your thighs, your legs like nothing else. And you're just like swinging your hips out. And you're having the time of your life. And you feel so badass. And you're having so much fun. And the time just flies by. And you're just being a model. And it really works. Like, it works the hips. Like, let me tell you. Anyway, let's get back to this. All right, so she looks at herself. Okay, 180. I averted my glance from the big mirror, focusing instead on the small silver saber, ornately sheathed, that rested on the polished mahogany console table beneath the mirror. The Irish maid led me down the hall to a formal living room, with soaring picture windows facing Fifth Avenue. Mrs. Kennedy will be with you shortly, she said before disappearing. I stood alone in the middle of the large room, wondering how to place myself. Should I be waiting for her, back straight, eyes ahead, like a soldier reporting for duty? Something about the decor told me this wasn't that stiff a household. It was a cross between cozy and elegant, the green velvet sofa with cream piping more plumply inviting than imposing. I gazed out the tall windows at the magnificent view. Central Park's billion-gallon reservoir shimmered like a giant's rain puddle. I could see the hansom cabs lined up on the street far below, tiny horses waiting to take tiny tourists on carriage rides. Ladies with shopping bags and businessmen with briefcases hurried along Fifth Avenue. Manhattan suddenly seemed like a toy village. I turned my attention back to the living room, with my eyes gravitating to the treasure so casually and perfectly displayed. Lacquered boxes and porcelain vases, fancy ashtrays, framed etchings, and oil paintings hanging on the walls. In the corner by the doorway stood a life-size statue of a headless naked person, illuminated by its own spotlight. Instinctively, I drew my arms closer to my body. I could hear the sharp voice of my current employer in my head, hectoring me about my clumsiness. She wasn't entirely wrong, but her badgering made me nervous, and that in turn caused even more mishaps. She docked my wages for each one. My paycheck would never begin to cover the replacement cost of anything I accidentally broke, burned, or bleached at this address. Calm down, I told myself. If I made myself any more nervous than I already was, I would be too tongue-tied to even utter my name, much less answer any interview questions. I decided I would perch daintily on the edge of the green sofa, polite and poised. That would be the perfect note to strike. I sat, only to sink deeply into the down cushion. I was struggling to rearrange myself so I wouldn't look like Cleopatra lounging around in hopes of being fed a grape when a small boy with a mop of brown hair wandered into the room. A black and white cocker spaniel bounded after him. "Hello," the boy greeted me politely. "I'm John. Do you want to see my dog do a trick?" Both his grin and his energy were infectious. I smiled back and nodded. "Sure." Shannon, he commanded, "roll over." Tail wagging, the dog flopped onto the silk oriental rug and rolled over. "Roll over again," John urged him. Shannon immediately obliged. I was genuinely impressed. I'd grown up with a farm full of animals, forever chasing them down or being chased by them, it seemed, and here this little guy was practically P.T. Barnum before even his 4th birthday. He wasn't done. "Watch this," he said, taking a bone from his pocket and shoving it beneath one of the couch cushions. "Shanny, get the bone," John urged, the excitement in his voice sending the spaniel into what looked like a tail-wagging state of rapture, barking as he leapt up onto the sofa and began searching for his prize. The dog pawed furiously between the cushions until he found his bone and retrieved it. I clapped my hands. "Wow, what a smart dog," I exclaimed. The little boy beamed with pride. "Seriously, John," I went on, "that's no easy thing you've done there. You're a terrific dog trainer." "John, you're not letting that dog ruin my couch, are you?" I heard a woman softly chide. Neither of us had seen her slip into the room. I had no idea how long she'd been standing there. She stepped forward with a warm smile. "Hi, I'm Mrs. Kennedy," she introduced herself, needlessly. We were the same height. I would come to find out, but with her regal bearing, she seemed taller. I self-consciously straightened my shoulders and sucked in my stomach as I rose to greet her. She wore a long turtleneck sweater, smartly belted around her narrow waist, with tailored slacks. I caught just a whisper of her perfume, something floral but light. I was surprised by how naturally elegant she was. No big flashing diamonds or movie star makeup. I could immediately see the resemblance between mother and son. Both of them had fair skin and wonderfully thick, dark, wavy hair. But her brown eyes were as deep and unreadable as John's were open and guileless. I had barely stammered out my introduction when she nodded and asked me her first question. "Can you start right away?" I was dumbfounded. Had she just offered me the job without so much as a single query about my qualifications? I would learn much later from the staff that she had been watching from the hallway the whole time I was chatting with John. Here I had been worried about having to undergo some rigorous interrogation and Secret Service check, but the truth was, I had just been vetted by a preschooler and his cocker spaniel. "I don't know. I haven't told my employer anything, and I'll need to give her a few days' notice," I sputtered, wondering even as the words left my mouth why I felt the least bit of obligation to the bitter divorcee who had first hired me when I came to America months earlier. I was supposed to be her governess, but what she really wanted, it had turned out, was someone she could berate on a daily basis, now that her browbeaten husband had left. I could do nothing right. My very existence seemed to exasperate the woman I'll call Mrs. C. "Could you tell her today and start tomorrow?" Mrs. Kennedy suggested. "I suppose I could, but she'll likely get very angry and not give me a good reference," I fretted aloud. Mrs. Kennedy smiled the Mona Lisa half-smile that so bewitched every photographer who had ever tried to capture the real her. "You don't need a reference," she pointed out. "You've already got the job." We agreed I would return the next morning with my suitcase. It all seemed strangely matter-of-fact, more like I was watching a dream than having it, much less actually living it. I suppose I was just so filled with relief to be freed from my awful situation with Mrs. C that it didn't even fully register at first who had just rescued me. My self-esteem by then had sunk so low that I couldn't even congratulate myself for having just landed the most coveted job in America for a girl of my station. Arriving back the next morning at 10:40, everyone's shorthand I soon learned for the 1040 Fifth Avenue residence, Mrs. Kennedy's chief of staff and personal secretary, Nancy Tuckerman, gave me the rundown of my position as personal assistant to Mrs. Kennedy. I would attend to Mrs. Kennedy and also fill in as needed when the English governess, Maud Shaw, was off or on vacation. I would have Thursdays off, but was expected to work every other weekend and all holidays, except Christmas Day after the mid-afternoon meal. I would get a couple of weeks' vacation each summer, and Mrs. Kennedy would provide a free round-trip plane ticket home to Ireland so I could visit my family. I would also be regularly traveling with Mrs. Kennedy and the kids to Cape Cod for the summer, to New Jersey for weekends of horseback riding, to Colorado for skiing, and to Palm Beach for winter break, plus any little jaunts in between. Man, that sounds like a nice job. The longtime assistant I was replacing would continue to accompany Mrs. Kennedy on her overseas trips, though. Like the cook, waitress, and governess, I would live in the residence. I would be paid $75 a week. I was to address Mrs. Kennedy as Madam. It all sounded so overwhelming, as if I were taking on not merely a new job, but also a whole new life, one I could never have imagined and had no idea how to carry off. Was I expected to ski? Wintertime where I grew up meant sliding across frozen lakes in our shoes, or taking an old cardboard box out to ride down the small, empty country roads when they were turned into treacherous ribbons of ice. Ireland never lacked for rolling hills, and we made the most of them as kids. Who needed proper ice skates or sleds, let alone a pair of skis? As for my indoor duties, well, I could make a nice bed, to be sure, or happily entertain small children for hours at a time, but the truth was, I had no professional training, and not the slightest clue what being a professional assistant even meant. Yet now I was to do it for one of the most glamorous women in the world? I didn't have that kind of polish, and no idea how to fake it. The only one who seemed to have any confidence whatsoever in my untested abilities was Mrs. Kennedy herself. God save the both of us, I thought anxiously. The servants' quarters were in a hallway just off the kitchen. My pristine white bedroom was small yet cozy, with a clock radio and a lamp on the nightstand. There was a soft armchair with a small table beside it where I could pen my brief and sporadic letters home. I wasn't much of a correspondent. There was a little sink with a mirrored medicine cabinet there in the bedroom. When Madame later decided to redecorate the servants' wing, I was thrilled to be able to choose what I liked from the wallpaper samples her decorator selected. I had never been able to put any personal stamp on the bedroom I shared with my brothers and sisters in Ireland, and with girlish impulse I decided on a pattern of sweet little pink posies for my bedroom at 1040, not realizing how claustrophobic I was going to feel once a matching bedspread and new pink carpet were in place too. It wasn't until I had daughters of my own that I saw what I had done was basically give myself the little girl's dream room I had never had in my hard-scrabble childhood. The help shared a large bathroom just steps down the hall, and we also had use of a small lounge off the kitchen where we could take our breaks or relax after the workday was done. Besides me and Maud, my new co-workers would include May, the Irishwoman who had shown me in and served as waitress, plus a series of mostly sourpuss cooks who never lasted long, and then Charlie, who did the heavier janitorial-type chores like vacuuming or polishing all the floors and cleaning the half-dozen toilets. May was well into her 40s, but she had this innocent, childlike quality to her that you couldn't help but like. Maud and Charlie were both in their 60s. Charlie was a flamboyant gay bachelor from Galway, who reminded me of a little leprechaun the way he waggled his behind when he walked. He combed black shoe polish through his full head of white hair to give it a salt and pepper look, and favored patent leather shoes. He was a charmer with the gift of gab, and I took a liking to him right away. Maud was a different story. Maybe it was her posh English accent, or the air of authority she no doubt needed as a nanny, but I could feel her disdain instantly. She didn't seem to mingle much with the rest of the staff either, even preferring to take meals in her room rather than in the kitchen or break room with everyone else. Oh, that is like the old school British nanny way, isn't it? Because that's what you always, what we've read in other books is that they don't eat with the rest of the staff. They take meals in their room. Like they're in such a horrible position because Generally speaking, like if you read Jane Eyre or something, it's like she's above the rest. They're above the rest of the servants, but they're not in the family either. So they're caught in the middle. They're caught in between. So they're so isolated. Okay. After meeting them all, I was put under the tutelage of the longtime assistant I was replacing. Providencia Paradis, what a moniker, had begun working for Mrs. Kennedy in Washington, D.C. a few years before President Kennedy was elected, and then moved into the White House with the family. Pravi's primary task was managing Mrs. Kennedy's large wardrobe, keeping everything in like-new condition, properly rotated by the season, each outfit meticulously assembled according to the occasion. Pravi also made sure every ensemble was perfectly accessorized to Mrs. Kennedy's specifications, down to matching slippers and bathrobes for every night dress. Oh, what a life. Wouldn't that be beautiful? I mean, I'm schlumping around. What am I schlumping around in? Oh, I have like a muumuu, and then I have like a vintage robe and like old slippers that have a hole in them. That's me. What a catch I am. Okay. I would also pack and unpack Mrs. Kennedy's leather Louis Vuitton suitcases for each trip. It was Pravi who had selected the pink Chanel-style suit and pillbox hat for Dallas that November day. Both the pride Pravi took in her work and the attention to detail she gave it were evident from the minute she began showing me what to do. At 40, Pravi was twice my age, but she didn't look it. She was busty but trim and compact, with smooth brown skin and neatly coiffed hair. Originally from the Dominican Republic, she spoke with a Spanish accent, every bit as indecipherable as my Irish brogue, and we spent a good portion of every conversation asking each other to repeat things. That's heartwarming. Pravi may have been diminutive, but she was as bossy as a 5-star general, and she may have been a servant herself, but like Maud Shaw, Pravi radiated a sense of what came across to me as entitlement almost. Like she was a partner to this life of luxury, not merely propping it up. I couldn't quite decide whether I should envy her aplomb or resent her airs. As she set about showing me the ropes, I sensed a hint of insult and resentment on her part that Madame had deemed someone so green and unsophisticated a worthy successor to her. Looking back, I can hardly blame her. She was a titan being replaced by a teenager, after all. Not like that. Watch me and pay attention this time, became the refrain that snapped me out of my girlish daydreams as she over-explained even the simplest chores. Our first lesson was back in the laundry room at the ironing board. I knew how to iron already, but Pravi wasn't about to move on until she was certain that I knew how to iron her way. Madame's sheets were to be changed daily, and her nightgowns were to be freshly ironed and set out for her each evening. She had quite a collection. There were movie star peignoirs, is that how we pronounce it? In satin and lace, timelessly simple gowns in crisp cotton or linen, and cute flirty numbers like the short canary yellow one with the bow on each shoulder. Pravi handed me a long-sleeve cotton nightgown to practice on. I swiped the hot iron across the wrinkles and handed it back. Pravi scowled. "You missed some," she scolded. "Go slower and press down harder." I couldn't imagine Jacqueline Kennedy settling into her bed at night only to leap right back out in horror because there were some wrinkles on her nightgown. Who was going to look anyway besides Pravi? I wisely kept this argument to myself and had another go at the ironing board. At least, this wasn't the disaster my first ironing session with Mrs. C had been, when I hadn't known to remove the protective plastic cover from the ironing board first and ended up melting it into one of her favorite blouses. Pravi's ironing lesson wasn't nearly as bad as her tutorial on the care of Madame's collection of leather gloves, which turned out to involve rubbing down the pigskin with cleaning fluid. "Pravi, that's awful dangerous," I ventured as the toxic fumes filled the laundry room, making my eyes and lungs burn. "Well, you'll have to open a window or turn on the fan," Pravi said matter-of-factly, doing neither. Once the gloves were clean, she continued. They needed to be spread out on a white towel and massaged with baby powder to make them nice and slippy again. And then you wait for the ambulance to come and take you to the hospital, I thought. Once my apprenticeship was over and Pravi was gone, I fully intended to put those gloves in with the dry cleaning. Pravi's reputation for being a high-handed perfectionist was well established at 1040, and I spent tedious hours watching her demonstrate all manner of simple chores that my teenage brain assured me I could accomplish in half the time with half the effort. That's how I feel at my job. Like, I could do all this with way more efficiency. Oh. It was excruciating to fritter away 2 hours learning how to vacuum the white tile floor in Madam's bathroom when there wasn't a speck of dust to be seen in the first place. Pravi could spy a single strand of hair hiding along a baseboard from across the room. You have to check, she insisted, not satisfied until I had crouched down to examine my efforts, tile by tile. One afternoon, when I had finally ironed a nightgown to her military standards and went to put it away, Pravi snatched it right back with a sharp sigh of disgust. You didn't fold it right, she complained. What do I ever do right? I thought, my defense mechanism from Mrs. C's endless harping kicking in automatically before I could remind myself that at the end of the day, Pravi's servant boot camp was for my own good. I anxiously wondered if Madame was as exacting as Pravi was, though, and how long it would be before the former First Lady realized what a bumbling impostor she had put in such a choice position on her staff. I folded the nightgown again, concentrating on each step as if my life depended on it. I was somewhat relieved to find out that it wasn't just me who was rankled by Pravi's superiority. The Secret Service men assigned to protect John and Caroline throughout their childhood often hung out with the help in the kitchen or break room when they were changing shifts or hoping for a free sandwich or cup of tea. Muggsy, the one who had gotten me my job, took particular delight in needling Pravi, reminding her that she was a lame duck, and that young Kitty, as he called me, was running the house now. Kitty, is the Mexican princess bossing you around? He would ask, managing to insult Pravi's seniority and nationality in one fell swoop. She would fire some disparaging remark right back at him. Their constant sniping was free entertainment, at least for all the Irish help. It's true that we do love a good fight. You know, he had a crush on her. Madame stayed out of the domestic dramas playing out in her kitchen and back hallway, but she wasn't clueless about them, I soon discovered. In the running dialogue in my head, I was cheeky as you please and mouthed off to Pravi all the time, but in reality, I was a scared little rabbit whose instinct was to scamper away and hide if I sensed that trouble was afoot, or if I simply felt overwhelmed. Being Madame's personal assistant didn't allow for hesitation. I was expected to plunge right into the busy routines of 1040, not ease my way tentatively into the current of life there. In my own element, I was a sociable girl, but the more I worried about whether I would fit in, the more likely I was to withdraw. The natural chattiness and ease Madame had seen in me when I had been left alone in the living room with John wasn't as evident as I tried to get my bearings, and Madame quickly noticed. She seemed concerned about me settling in and not being chased off the way I gathered. Not chased off the way I gathered some previous heirs to Pravi's throne had been. How are you making out? She asked me kindly when we were alone one day. Is she all right with you? Oh, yes, madam, I hastened to assure her. Everything's fine, thank you. Sure, Pravi was nitpicky, but when you came right down to it, she was annoying, not cruel. I could live with that. Pravi's primary domain, soon to be mine, was Madame's closets. The bedroom walk-in was big, but jam-packed with Madame's everyday dresses, pants, skirts, and blouses, all arranged according to color. Lots of clothes still had their tags from Saks Fifth Avenue or Bergdorf Goodman, and would eventually go unworn into big bags Madame filled with clothes she planned to donate to the thrift shop or church charity. Fashionable, can you imagine? Can you imagine getting something with a tag still on that Jackie Kennedy just didn't bother wearing? Goodness. Okay. Beep, 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 beep. Fashionable pocketbooks and the roomy satchels she favored were lined up on the shelves, along with an array of beautiful hat boxes. Drawers or special fabric-lined boxes held accessories such as her signature gloves or the colorful headscarves that were considered the height of fashion then, no matter what the weather. Fine as they were, I thought it must be confusing to have so many outfits. And why so many of the same thing? Some even in the same color, I wondered, taking out the array of cream turtleneck sweaters alone. Oh, but it wasn't the clothes I coveted. The shoes were what set my heart racing. A single pair of shoes was an extravagance in my big family when I was growing up. Most of our clothes were hand-me-downs from relatives in America who sent care packages a couple of times a year, and none of Uncle Pat and Aunt Rose's girls wore the same size shoe as my sister Briege and me. We always had to stuff paper or rags in the toes of the ones that were too big, or suffer the pinching from the ones that were too small. I don't remember ever having a pair that actually fit. One of my favorite pastimes once I got to New York City was to window shop for shoes at the fashionable shops on the Upper East Side. Madame's closet could rival any of them. I had never seen such a dazzling selection of shoes. There were enough to fill a high-end boutique: leather boots in classic cognac, London look ones in mauve white and sexy black, pumps in every color and heel, elegantly casual loafers, spotless sneakers for morning jogs around the reservoir, the reservoir, and a pair of ivory flip-flops with a big leather flower separating the toes. The latter, I came to see, were a favorite, often hidden beneath long, flowing caftan or maxi dresses when she hosted small dinner parties with old friends, like the men from President Kennedy's trusted inner circle, who would appear now and then as a group to check in on her, all of them talking and smoking and drinking and laughing, remembering deep into the night. As I surveyed the closet, trying to memorize where everything went, Pravi took out a pair of size 10 pumps and turned them over to show me an X carved into each leather sole. You have to do this to every new pair that comes into the house, Pravi instructed. The discreet slashes, she explained, kept Madame from slipping on slick marble floors. It about killed me the first time I dutifully knifed the bottom of an exquisite kid pump. I would have felt less heartsick if I had been told to go up the block and vandalize a masterpiece at the Met instead. Less shocking but more intriguing to me was the discovery of a 1/4-inch lift affixed to one heel on each of Madame's shoes, apparently meant to compensate for one leg being slightly shorter than the other. No one would have ever guessed. Even in her stocking feet, she had flawlessly beautiful posture. Shoes were actually the very first thing Madame and I bonded over. Mrs. Tuckerman had provided a crisp white uniform when I was hired, and I used a good bit of my final hard-won paycheck from Mrs. C to splurge on new shoes to match the uniform. I somehow convinced myself that the thick-soled nurse's shoes I bought were as stylish as they were practical, as I pulled them on the first morning I woke up at 10:40. At least they were nice and cushy. I didn't even have to bother with anklets or stockings. Off to the kitchen I padded to pick up Madame's tray of tea, toast, a soft-boiled egg, and the daily newspapers. Bringing her breakfast in bed at 8 o'clock was my first official duty each day. I was nervous. Was I supposed to shake her if she didn't awaken when I entered, sing out a cheery "Good morning," or wait until I was spoken to first? I had ironed enough nightgowns to know, at least, that she wouldn't be waiting for me like my previous employer did, in her birthday suit. My hands were already clammy as I stood outside the bedroom door and knocked lightly before entering. "Good morning, madam," I murmured as I set the tray down and began opening the shutters. Clear fall light spilled across her queen bed as she stirred. Her corner bedroom faced the broad sweep of Fifth Avenue and Central Park along the front, and the narrower, quieter 85th Street to the side. The room was wonderfully tranquil. But as I walked from window to window, I became aware of a persistent little squeaking sound. The realization that it was coming from my feet, which were perspiring against the rubber of my new shoes, made me more nervous than I already was, and only amplified the squeaks that resulted from my every step. I was mortified. I glanced over and saw that Madame was fully awake and propped against her pillows, settling in with her tea and papers. There was no way she couldn't have heard the squeaks, and I was sure she assumed the worst. I hurried into the bathroom, hoping she would think I was merely arranging towels or something, and frantically rummaged through her cupboards until I found a tin of talcum powder I was looking for. I sat down on the closed toilet lid and thoroughly dusted the inside of each nurse shoe, praying the chalk would absorb the moisture of my feet and squelch the humiliating soundtrack. Mission accomplished. I hurried back into the master bedroom, my shoes blissfully quiet. All that powder felt silky on my feet, too. No cheap drugstore stuff in that bathroom. My relief was short-lived when I noticed something floating around my feet at ground level. Like a little white cloud. Madame was busy with her breakfast by then and hadn't noticed what I now spotted. Powder marks all over her carpet. I took a few tentative steps and saw white puffs shooting out of my shoes. I darted back into the bathroom, shutting the door this time, and sat on the toilet lid again, trying to figure out what to do now that my shoes were emitting what looked like smoke. I couldn't go out there again. She would know I had gotten into her powder. I was about to be fired before lunch on my very first day. What a bumbling, hopeless mess I was, and now I couldn't even run away to save face because I was trapped in Jacqueline Kennedy's bathroom. I put my head in my hands and started laughing uncontrollably. Kathy, is everything all right? I heard the door open and the worry in Madam's voice as she took sight of me with my face still buried in my hands, shoulders shaking. What's wrong? She asked kindly. I was too embarrassed to answer, and in the midst of my giggling fit, I wouldn't have been able to get an intelligible sentence out anyway, so I jumped up and ran past her, shooting puffs of powder from my shoes as I fled. I was losing too much powder, though, and the squeaking noises were back, sounding louder and more urgent as I sprinted to my room. I collapsed on the bed, burying my face in the pillow to muffle my laughter. Kathy? There she was again. Madam tapped on the closed door. I had no choice but to open it. She stepped in, her perfectly arched brows furrowed with concern. The look on her face quickly turned to bewilderment when she realized that I was laughing, not sobbing. Unless I wanted a Secret Service escort to the loony bin, it was time to come clean. As I started to explain the whole story, Madam burst into laughter, which sent me into another spasm of hysterics, and by the time I led her into the hallway to point out my telltale trail of powdered footprints, both of us had tears running down our cheeks. The rest of the staff took turns peeking around the corner trying to see what was so amusing. We finally composed ourselves, and Madam was still chuckling when she ventured into the kitchen, where the rest of the staff were clamoring to know what had just happened with the new girl. Oh, that Kath is just too funny, I overheard her say. Oh, okay. I'm crying, so, in a good way. Oh, I think this is a nice little break from, I love Kitty Kelly, but it's nice to not so much venom, All right. Well, we've made it to 51 minutes. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for being patient with me. And I actually am going to get back on a schedule because I am getting more used to my job and things are, I'm getting my bearings after the breakup, I guess we'll call it. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.